Wait a minute, that's not right. Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens try to play mind games with the Bloodline and A-Town Down Under. Giovanni Vinci makes his triumphant, long-awaited return in a blink of an eye. And for a final show on Fox, we had a surprising number of firsts. Okay! And the news! And the news indeed, we had the final SmackDown on Fox from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And this was the first SmackDown in 15 shows all the way back in May, where we had more than 4 matches. So I guess that's a good way to go out for Fox. So let's get to the main event, which was the Bloodline taking on the Street Profits and DIY. Well, we have to start at the top of the show, where Cody Rhodes said that there should be a title match for the undisputed WWE Championship on the initial show on USA Network next week for SmackDown. So Rhodes attempted to call out Jacob Fatu as the #1 contender, but Fatu got up onto the apron and affirmed that Solo Sikoa was his tribal chief. So Sikoa called the entire Bloodline in to attack Rhodes 4-on-1, but thankfully for him, both the Street Profits and DIY were right there to back him up. So General Manager Nick Aldis was somehow also right there, and he immediately then confirmed a match next week for Rhodes versus Sikoa for the WWE title in a steel cage. In addition to that announcement, he also said that if anyone in the ring attacked each other before the start of the main event, they would be fined and suspended. So I am really glad to see that we at least have one general manager on either Raw or SmackDown who at least has a brain and is able to enforce the rules. So let's get to a couple quick highlights for this match, and we had Ciampa tagging in both Gargano and Dawkins at the same time, which really confused Solo Sikoa, and they double teamed him and then super kicked the rest of the Bloodline. Well, Ciampa also had an incredible suplex on Tama Tonga off of the top rope onto the floor onto all members of both teams. Truly an incredible move there. Then to end it, we had Montez Ford hitting a 450 splash, but Jacob Fatu was there to break up the pin, and he went on a rampage, hitting a super kick, then a Samoan drop, then another super kick, and finally an Impaler DDT, teeing it up for his tribal chief, Solo Sikoa, to land 2 Samoan spikes on Ford to win the match and end the Fox era. Well, this was obviously the first match for both groups, so not much to talk about there. Earlier on, we had a triple threat match between Kevin Owens and both Austin Theory and Grayson Waller when A-Town Down Under went up to Owens and interrupted them, with Waller saying that KO and Rhodes must no longer be friends because KO did not try to help Rhodes at the beginning of the show. Well, KO obviously called both of them idiots and morons and said that he didn't think those two were much of friends either, so he wanted to put them up to the challenge of having to battle each other in this triple threat match. But of course, A-Town Down Under wanted to keep this more of a handicap match, so to start the match, Owens had to take control immediately, and he was able to do so, landing a cannonball on both of them onto the floor. Then he powerbombed Waller through a table that was set up at ringside. But much later on, Theory was able to land a rolling blockbuster on KO, but Waller tried to steal Theory's pin. So instead of letting the count get to 3, Theory yanked Waller's legs and the two argued over it. But after a short back and forth, they were back on the same page, so Owens ended up slamming their heads together while he was on the turnbuckle, and then he was able to put it away, nailing a stunner on Theory that caused Theory to bounce straight up into the air before Owens got the pin. Of course, however, Waller was right there to attack KO from behind, so Theory landed an A-Town down, and Waller finished it off with a rolling flatliner. So despite losing, I guess A-Town Down Under managed to stay together and get the last laugh. But for the match itself, KO does get the win and goes to 1-4 in multi-person singles matches, while Waller goes to 0-3 in multi-person singles matches, and Theory is 0-2 in them. In the other men's singles match, we had Giovanni Vinci making his triumphant return and debut as a solo act on the SmackDown roster, and he took on Apollo Crews. But Vinci was gloating just a bit too much and had some trouble taking off his very expensive jacket, and the ref had enough of that and just decided to ring the bell. Apollo Crews came up from behind and rolled him up immediately to get the pin in about 4 seconds. So Crews, thankfully for him, gets a win whether it takes 40 minutes or 4 seconds, so he goes to 1-4 in one-on-one matches, but is still just 1-8 in all matches. Well, for Vinci, he had done most of his work on the tag side as well, so he is 0-2 in one-on-one action and also 1-8-1 in all matches. On the women's side, thankfully, we got 2 women's singles matches, so that is fantastic news at least. The first of which was Bayley taking on Tiffany Stratton. Well, at the beginning of the show, Nia told Tiffy that everyone was talking about how Tiffy was going to cash in on her. But Tiffany said that she would never do that and said that Chelsea was just spreading lies. So Nia said that she would go on and help her just the way that Tiffy helped her last week. Well, I would like to have better analysis of this match, but unfortunately, Fox's cameras kept seeming to have technical issues and we had several blackouts throughout this match. And I know personally, I would love to have seen every second of this match on camera, just so I could give you the best analysis possible. No other reason than that, of course. But nonetheless, since we can't do that here, let's go right to the end. And it looked like Nia was about to help Tiffy, so Bayley hit a suicide dive on Nia. But as she rolled back into the ring, Tiffy took advantage and immediately put her into a backslide pinning attempt, which probably would have gotten at least a 3 count. But the ref was not looking as Nia immediately complained to the ref about that suicide dive. So Bayley was able to kick out and immediately hit the Rose Plant to pick up the win. For Bayley, this was her first match since losing the title at SummerSlam, and she improves to 6-2-1 in one-on-one action. For Tiffy, surprisingly, she's lost 4 straight one-on-one matches with her last win all the way back in March. So she falls to just 5-4-1. And in our last match, we had Chelsea Green taking on Michin. Well, Michin looked to be about ready to put this one away as she landed a devastating code breaker off of the turnbuckle, and as she set up for a Styles Clash, well, Piper Niven came onto the apron and distracted her. And then later, Piper again distracted Michin as she was looking to go back into the ring and got up onto the apron, allowing Chelsea to hit a jump kick, knocking her straight back down to the floor. But this time it was Chelsea doing the distracting as she distracted the ref, and that let Piper hit her crushing senton on the floor, so she threw Michin back into the ring where Chelsea was able to immediately hit the Unpretty Her and pick up the win. Well, for Chelsea, this was also her first one-on-one victory, and she improves to 1-5 in these matches. While Michin, well, she probably should have taken a week off because she was favoring her ribs throughout the night, and she falls to just 1-8 in one-on-one matches. And beyond the mat for SmackDown, well, Carmelo Hayes yet again looked like a total stooge as he had the most ridiculous logic of all time, saying that his 2 wins over Andrade, which only made him 2-2 against Andrade, were somehow more impressive than LA Knight, having already had 2 successful title defenses since winning the championship at SummerSlam. But I guess Hayes at least had a little bit of a point, saying that those 2 wins may be enough to make him the default #1 contender for the US title, which is probably only the case because we never really have enough matches to justify anyone else being a #1 contender. But nonetheless, Andrade then interrupted and said that he also should be the #1 contender, and he probably should since he has a lot better record than Hayes. But nonetheless, all 3 men decided to argue, with Andrade eventually pushing Hayes into Knight. But for their troubles after a brief brawl, we had Knight being the one to get the last laugh, hitting a BFT on both Andrade and then on Hayes. And lastly, we had Legado del Fantasma yet again chatting it up in a restaurant, since I guess that's where they have all of their business take place. So, you know, let's win a couple more matches, guys, and then we'll get more excited about that. So with that, let's go to STFs. And in tonight's STFs, we have no Bloodline edition, with General Manager Aldis laying down the law, preventing the Bloodline from attacking. So it was a light night, and we start with Grayson Waller attacking Kevin Owens after their match. So both Waller and Theory hit their finishers, garnering them both a fine. Then we had Andrade arguing with Carmelo Hayes and LA Knight, with Andrade instigating by pushing Hayes into Knight. Though Andrade caught a BTF, he's the only one that gets a fine for that instigation. And lastly, Piper Niven made it a habit to distract Michin whenever she could, but it was Chelsea distracting the ref that allowed Piper to hit a crushing senton on those injured ribs, so Piper will pick up a fine. Apollo Crews and Chelsea Green both managed to pick up their first one-on-one wins of the year, while Kevin Owens beat both members of A-Town Down Under, but paid for it in the end. And speaking of ends, it was the Bloodline standing strong as ever in the middle of the ring, putting up the ones to end the Fox era. I'm Dr. O'Kay, reporting on the WWE, where everything is okay.